Today. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming, and thanks to a lot of you for staying. I'll say this again. Welcome to the 70th Annual Senior Design Conference. This is a capstone project that allows students to display their design skills, technical skills, communication skills, innovative ideas, and it's a challenge for them to meet goals despite lots of obstacles and adversity. So without further ado, without any further delay, I'll turn it over to Danielle.
Hi, everyone. So before we get started, I just want to start with some audience participation. When you hear Chick-fil-A or think about Chick-fil-A, what are words that come to mind?
Lunch.
Chicken. Any other words?
Good service.
Good service. Okay, so our presentation focused on something that most people don't think about when they go get good food, and that's the employees. And so we're Team Chick-fil-A, and we are jolting the closing process at Chick-fil-A.
I'm Corey Scholler.
I'm Daniel Thomas.
I'm Josh Wassel. Thank you.
So just for a brief overview of what you'll hear this morning, I'll start us off with some background information about Chick-fil-A. We'll then get into the problem description that was brought to us. Throughout the presentation, you'll hear us refer a lot to JOLT, and so I will go over what JOLT is. From there, we'll hear from Bay as he goes over the goals and objectives of this project. We'll then hand it over to Josh as he goes over the tools that we use to achieve this project. And Corey will close us off with our cost-benefit analysis and the recommendations we have for Chick-fil-A after this closes. So just to begin, this is a snapshot of the average Chick-fil-A that you'll see on any day. There are over 2,600 locations across the nation. That's a big number. Our location of focus is the one on West Finch Avenue. It's the first Chick-fil-A in Kalamazoo County. It's been open since 2017. As everyone knows, Chick-fil-A is known for their delicious food, amazing customer service, and overall just outstanding business. Between the two companies in Chick-fil-A, in Kalamazoo, they have about $9 million in sales, which is a big impact in a small area. And a fun fact is that both locations are actually owned by the same person. So, just to get us started, this is the infamous line everyone knows when they drive down West Finch. Long line, but it's always you get quick and you get great food at the end. As I mentioned before, we'll talk about JOLT. You'll hear two terms, FOH and DOH. FOH stands for front of house. When we say front of house, that refers to this image right here. This is the area typically customers interact with. What you see in that image is actually the cash register and the drive-through line. This next image is the lemonade stand that everyone loves to go to. This is what it looks like at the end of the night once it's broken down. Right here we have the toppings that usually go on sandwiches, salads like that. You see a scale so everyone gets the same amount of ingredients. This right here is in the back of house. This is just the image of the coolers and employees working at the grease line. And another back of house dot, it just shows their overall storage. Sorry. So our problem. We were bought with the problem that employees don't know what time they'll leave every night. Chick-fil-A likes to change their time. Sometimes they'll close at 9, sometimes they'll close at 10. But when those doors close, employees will still serve whoever in the drive-through line. And so even though doors lock at 9, employees could be there as late as 10:30. So then we went through the process of, well, why don't they know what time they'll leave? And that led us to there is no overall procedure. It's very people-driven. As I said before, both locations are owned by the same person. And so when they opened the West Main location, they took half their staff and shifted over. They realized all the same knowledge was not left with everybody. And then this led us to, well, why is there a processing line? It's because their JOLT system has not been updated. And we'll get a little bit to JOLT next. So JOLT is a checklist management system typically used within the restaurant business. It's used for team accountability, digital food safety compliance, and to boost employee performance. At our location, we noticed it was used more as a reactive measure than a proactive measure, and this is how we use it. So in this video, it just shows you overall what Jolt is. It shows, as you'll see, back of house and front of house. All these things you see with a checklist are just more lists and tasks that they have to complete. As you can see, it can be a long list. And so our goal was to just fix the Jolt system, to fix the first picture of knowing what time they'll get them.
Okay, we all know Chick-fil-A's closing time is 9 p.m. every night. But to say employees cannot go home right away. They should need spend an hour or more time to closing the restaurant. It seems many employees are high school students and university students. Home till later is not safe, so we should get safe home. Reasonable time is very important for them. And closing the time, Chick-fil-A can also saving thousands of dollars a year. So our project goal was reduce the overall closing time by restriction the closing procedure. To achieve the goals, we need to minimize the closing time, get employees clock out of store by 13 p.m. and calculate the cost benefit knowledge analysis. While working on the project, there have four constraints that are important on the process. The first is a Jolt system. If we just register and make improved on the original system, it may not enough. The second is food regulations. Chick-fil-A is the first food restaurant. For food safety and I think for the food we need strict follows the food safety regulations. And the next is safe. In all the closing process, closing staff not only need to close the facility, they also need to prepare food for opening staff. So how to balance the time is also we need to concept. And next is seasonality. Our project runs in winter. That many people will avoid going outside to activities. So there will few customers. But when brought up, the employees may need serve more customers after they finish the business. So the improve the closing process can may not perfect curve the summer closing process.
So for next, we're going to kind of look over our actual project plan as a team. So as a team, we broke up our project into 4 equal steps, beginning with how we define the problem, then moving into how we develop and select the best design option for our actual implementations. Next, we wanted to make sure we spent ample time refining, testing, and optimizing all of our implementations to make sure that they were effective. And then finally, after all of our refining and testing was done, we wanted to make sure that we delivered actual recommendations and implementations to Chick-fil-A. So the first tool that we used was the Disciplinary Approach. Using this approach allowed us as a team to break up the problems into 8 various steps, and then as a team we could go over all 8 of these steps to actually find the root causes and gain a systematic thinking process as a team, the actual problem. The next tool we used was a 5-why analysis that we developed as a team. So we wanted to break down the problem from the source, figure out all of the root causes as to why the closing process actually isn't being completed effectively, and then finally identify the areas where all implementation is needed in the restaurant. So our 5-why looked a little bit like this: employees not knowing when they will be leaving after the 9 p.m. close. So why does this happen? It's because the closing process is people-driven. Well, why is the closing process people-driven? Because Jolt task lists need updating and optimizing. So the next thing that we did a lot of was process observations. So process observations are key to understanding all of the different tasks and all of the different things that need to be done every night when the restaurant is closing. And since we were the ones actually designing the overall list, it was vital for us to know how each task is done in the proper way it needs to be done. So right here you see an operator doing a back of the house task, which would be breaking down the salad station each night. And then in the top right, you have an operator doing the front of house task, which would be getting ready to mop and clean all the floors. So moving forward, we were actually able to introduce various lean manufacturing concepts into the project that you would typically see in a traditional manufacturing environment. However, we were able to introduce them into a fast food restaurant. So we were able to introduce standardization, buy less, and we eliminated some waste in the actual restaurant. So for standardization, we did a lot of time-oriented lists, and we systematically ordered them in a way that was they would be completed the same way every night. And then we also did a lot of sorting to find the best actual section and time that each slot should be completed. And then doing so helped us improve the visual aspects, and then it also helped us implement goals for sustainability in the future. Then for elimination of waste, we actually were able to decrease the overall number of the tasks on each task list while still being the same amount effective. So we're able to decrease tasks that need to be done each night while still being as effective. And then finally, for our design and selection of our overall sheets and implementations that we were going to make into the restaurant, there's a few things that we wanted to keep in mind and to abide by. So one of those being that we wanted to stay within the capabilities of the Jolt system. As you saw in the video earlier in the presentation, it's a very straightforward system. And so being able to keep our implementations that could, so that they can be uploaded into Jolt was kind of vital for us. And then doing so, we wanted these physical tracking sheets to actually be in the restaurant as well, so that they're hung up on a wall, so that they are looked at every night, and so that doing so, these visual tracking sheets, any operator that looks at them is going to be able to see when stuff needs to be done, what needs to be done, and then the manager is also going to be able to look at these, track each night. The manager is going to be able to track the progress and the performance of how everyone's doing the front house and the back of house each night at closing.
So to start developing these tracking sheets, we had to start by keeping the back of house and front of house separated. Those people have different training when they're hired on and different skill sets, and they don't get cross-trained right now, so we didn't want to mix them up, which led to our task timing. Once we split those up, we knew what tasks related to which areas. We had to determine how long all those individual tasks take, so we knew when they could be started at night. Some had to be started earlier if they take longer, and some could be waited for. To stay on track for overall closing time, which is 30 minutes after close. They do close their hours sometimes, so the goal was 30 minutes after they shut the doors. And then adding a process tracking for accountability for those managers. This led to optimizing those drafts with a lot of observations. We spent a lot of time in the dining areas and then in the back of house where cooking and prepping is done. And then that led to a lot of interviews. Started with the owner and the GM. but a lot of time we spent there, we were able to talk to shift leads, managers, and then down to the regular line employees because they know best what they do every day and every night. And then we were able to take that data to analyze those tasks, and like Josh said, we need to prioritize those. Certain things had to be done before others in the restaurant, so that was very important because we wanted to be in chronological order so they could just check them off as they go down. Now with that, the final step was just kind of updating formatting and making them look presentable. They're going to be visual or be able to see by customers because they're going to be posted around. So we just wanted them to look halfway decent. So our process development started within the Jolt system. This is a snapshot just of the video of how they are shown in the Jolt system and those lists, which then led to our first drafts. These are in order, and as you can see on the top, it originally was completion time by 9:15, but eventually we made sure we wanted to start those tasks by a certain time, because if they were started by that time, that would mean they'd get out by that 9:30. So you can see we transferred those into chronological order onto these checklists. And this is a snapshot of what we actually printed out and like laminated to give them as their visual tools that they could use every night, all the way on the right here. So you can see it has time completed on there, so you can see just when it gets done, and then completed by, which is that accountability aspect and the way managers can kind of track who's doing what. And on top of the morality of getting people out more consistently earlier, we also wanted to add an economic benefit to this project. So we conducted a cost-benefit analysis based on the idea of reduced employee turnover because of the increased employee satisfaction of getting out more consistently and earlier. So currently there's about 120 employees per store, and approximate 60% current turnover, which is very low still right now for especially the restaurant industry. That would mean they're hiring 72 new people a year at a salary of approximately $12 per hour as a part-time employee. That would be $14,400. And then approximately 25% of their full-time salary is what it costs to onboard a new employee. So you can see here, even at reducing their turnover by 2.5%, that would be 3 employees a year, and that would equate to $10,800. And then anywhere down to 50% is $43,000, and that's per store. So we have 5 further recommendations to Chick-fil-A. First one was create standard work for the front of house and back of house, standardizing not only the complete process, but each task in those checklists. Introducing more visual tools. They already do this a lot for their food prep. They have everything laid out so everything looks the same every time, it's done the same every time. But applying those to other checklists in Jolt, they have everything from maintenance on machines to, we did their closing procedure, but they have open procedures. So implementing that is effective in other areas, so it should be effective in the checklist. Applying those task methods and task mapping strategies to the rest of the checklist in Jolt. Like I said, they have a lot. So extending this should help eliminate waste in other areas. Continue monitoring how this works. There's no reason to implement something if you don't track it. You want to make sure it stays consistent, and then if it needs any updating or editing. And then further implementation with the hopes of implementing it to the West Main location here in Kalamazoo, which would double the benefits of the project. So in conclusion, we used the 5 why analysis, our 3 pillars of Kaizen, and our 8 discipline approach to hopefully reduce the closing time by up to 50%, which can equate to up to $40,000 a year per location. And that's with the hopes of also implementing these recommendations into the West Main location as well. We just want to give a thanks to Edith and Scott. They were our 2 contacts, the owner and GM at Chick-fil-A, for giving us this project. Our chief faculty sponsor, Dr. Malik, and then our senior design instructor, Professor Danahan. With that, we'd like to answer any questions you guys may have.
Did you have a chance to talk with the current employees to get their impression of changes that you were recommending? Because they're probably going to have an impact on their take-home pay as you improve, reduce the level of cost to the time cost.
Yeah, so a lot of time we did spend there. We were able to talk to different employees because they have different shifts each night, and they were excited about the project to hear about that. because in their mind, they're getting they're reducing that, getting out 30 minutes earlier. They might lose $5-6 in there, but it's more their time at that point later in the night than that losing a little bit on their paycheck each week or two, which was good to hear because they were excited about it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Kind of dovetail off of that. There's also the business side. So you calculated your cost savings in terms of employee turnover. But the other part, probably the more easy to realistically measure, would be how much labor did I reduce in time closing, and how much does that mean I don't have to spend it on the employee?
So we did that too as well, but it's after looking at the numbers, comparing the turnover rate to the actual money we would save when it was just the labor hours, it was way less significant than focusing on the turnover. So that's why we chose to include the turnover. Because if it's like we said, they're missing out on $6 each night, it wouldn't be as substantial as the turnover.
It was considered though as an option.
It would have just been good to get there to show, also show it's your turnover cost.
Oh, thank you.
You got one.
Like implementation feedback. We did not get a chance to get it fully implemented into the store. That's why I kind of more into our recommendations by the end of this project. But they have everything from us. They were excited about it. We presented it to them last week. They were happy with what we did, and we provided all of them with the files and everything in case anything needs to be edited, and they can use that in the future to further develop it.
You have to predict like how much. I know you got goal was 30 minutes. How much do they? How long do you think it will take for them to get down to that 30-minute mark with the file you guys have?
If they stick to the times that we outlined, because we outlined the 9:15 slots and the 9 p.m. slots for both the array of tasks. So if they stick within those guidelines, it should be plus or minus 10%. I would think, as long as they're the people who are actually doing the tasks are all trained. And we did those in retrospect to how long each task takes and when it should actually be done.
Yeah, and in the front of house as well, there are actually tasks. There's a task list that starts at 8:45. So there's a lot of things that actually get done before. So we did as best we can, moving everything as forward as far as possible, which are technically pre-closing tasks, but they're grouped the same. So getting as many things done before that 9 o'clock time slot will also help them stay on track with that.
So, for example, that would be like, for example, at night, nobody's really drinking coffee. So one of the tasks for closing the coffee machine can be done even before any of these. And so they would take note of that. And then as I had in the presentation for the salad bar, those were all pre-made. So that's another thing that could be knocked out earlier to actually reduce the actual time instead of doing it at 9 o'clock when no one's getting the salad.
Have any questions online? Any questions online?
Nope.
Congratulations, Tim.